Hello, Mimi.
Hello, Heather. How are you doing?
Good. So you're in London.
I'm in London right now. I actually just bought a property here. So I'm based between London and the Bahamas now.
Fun. How far is that adventure? Is it far? London, Bahamas?
Yeah, it's like an 8 hour flight. So I
Okay,
will,
so no,
yeah, it's a lot.
I love it. So I was introduced to your app, Superhuman.
Yes.
And what I enjoyed about it, because there's a lot of apps out there, and we're going to talk about this, but what I enjoyed about it was the quick energy shift. I attract a lot of busy professional women raising children. And the number one thing I hear is, I don't have time. And yet, shifting your energy does not have to take a lot of time. So, what inspired you to like a little background of your story? What got you to create an app and
Yeah.
why that is so important to you?
So Superhuman, if anyone listening knows it, is quite the unconventional meditation app. We're actually moving away from the word meditation. Later this year, we're launching a new word to describe what the audio content
Are you
is.
are you saying out loud what this new word is? Because I
So
feel like, okay, I was like, I heard you say this previously, and I'm like, do we know what the word is? We'll
I'll
have to
tell you
find
off air, but we're not releasing it yet.
out. Okay.
We're still in the launch figuring it all out phase, but that will happen later in the next couple months. But yeah, so about 7 years ago, I was starting to get very much so into personal development, and I was learning all the things. I was reading all the books. I was really doing everything I thought I had to change my life. I was not happy. I was not healthy. I was partying and going out and drinking and doing drugs in my early 20s, and I felt like crap and I didn't feel like myself. And I had a big pull to start working on myself and reading these personal development books that were slowly changing my life and opening up my eyes to all the new potentials. And then I was reading about how visualization and meditation is so good. And I wanted to do all the things. I was doing the vision board. I was doing the journaling. I was doing the 5 a.m. wake ups. I was doing it all. I was a very good student. I wanted to
Mhm.
change my life very badly. But the one thing I could not stick to was sitting in silence and meditating and doing
Mhm.
the traditional apps like the Headspace and the Calms. It didn't resonate with me. I didn't feel energized by opening those apps. I didn't it was just part of my practice that I didn't enjoy doing. I loved doing all the other stuff. It was giving me energy. But for meditation, I just was, for some reason, quite reluctant to continue this habit. It wasn't, of course, it makes you feel good if you stick to it, but I was having trouble sticking to it. So, what I started doing, because I was learning all the neuroscience about how meditation and visualization can change your brain and actually change your beliefs and help you become this new version of yourself. I wanted those benefits, that effect, but I didn't really want to do it in that traditional meditation way. So without even thinking about it, I started recording these audio clips for myself. No one else would listen to them. I would record them on the voice memos app on my iPhone.
Mhm.
And I started recording these clips, essentially explaining to myself what my future looks like. I was retraining my mind to see this as a potential. I was hearing about what my life is going to be like, what it is like. And I was envisioning what that felt like in the moment. And I wouldn't listen to these audios with my eyes closed in meditation, lotus pose. I was listening to these audios while I was cooking, while I was cleaning, while I was getting ready in the morning, going to the gym. It was kind of, when I was in the mood to listen to that, I'd listen to that instead of a podcast. And I still listen to podcasts, and I always have, and music. But this kind of took up a different part of my life. And it was when I wanted something that was not music, but something that had music, that was inspiring, that I could just listen to in the background, that would also make me feel really excited about my future. And it was an active, functional audio type of thing, is what I call it. So fast forward a few years, and I kept doing this. And I kept listening to these audios, and I'd change them all the time because I'd get bored of them after a week or two, and I'd just make the next one. And I actually ended up adding music to be to behind some of them just to make it a little bit more fun to listen to. A few years pass and my life has began radically changing, and it was for everything that I was doing. I really don't think it was just one thing, but these audios definitely kept me in that energetic state, and I believe had the biggest impact on my transformation. I'm earning more money. I'm becoming a successful entrepreneur for once. I had so many failures and I was starting to find things that worked. I was transforming my relationship with my body. My old eating disorder went away. My relationship to myself completely started changing. I found the love of my life. Pause for a second because it's funny. I recorded one of these audios the day before I met my now fiance, describing him and what he was like. And I met him the day after. So, things like that just started happening. And it was just, it became part of my life. I have like hundreds of these audio files. And a few years later, so about 3 years ago, or almost 4 years ago now, I launched a subscription platform for my audience online. I had an Instagram audience. I have had my podcast for almost 6 years. So I, wanted to create a subscription business for this, avenue of mine. And it was all health and wellness related. So I had a variety of different videos and audios on there, from recipes to workout videos, because I'm trained in Pilates, to these motivational audios. I made more generalized ones for the public and I added music to it. And I decided to call them meditations because I didn't really know what else to call them. Mm-hmm. And I just put them kind of at the bottom just to add a bit of extra value to my subscribers. Within a few months, I could clearly see that I was onto something. This was a very unique thing that I had and people loved it. So it became the most popular part of the platform. And I quickly started making a very good amount of money, more than I had ever made before. So I decided to take that money and reinvest it into the business and create Superhuman, which is a new company based off these audios. And it's been almost 2.5 years now since I've launched Superhuman, and it's grown like wildfire. We've barely put any money into marketing, and it's just been heavily word of mouth. And we're now a team of 12 people. And I'm constantly just in awe of what this has become. Mm-hmm. And we have meditations. Well, we're going to stop calling them that soon, but we have audio files for every moment of the day, from walking meditations to getting ready in the morning meditations to 2-minute pep talks right before you go into a big meeting, to legs up wall meditations after, a night out and you want some lymphatic drainage, to sleep meditations that reprogram your subconscious mind, to motherhood meditations that are guided by a good friend of mine, Dr. Mallory. I have hundreds and hundreds of pieces of content on there, and we have tens of thousands of people using it daily. And that's my success story. But just before I end that off, I will say I missed out every failure that I had, obviously faced up until that moment. I had so many things that I tried and failed before this. And I can confidently say this is my, the first thing that really worked for me.
So much of what you're saying, I can hear, what is your relationship to failure now? When people are like, when they ask that silly question.
I don't think failure, like I'm not scared of failure. Failure is just like, all right, next, I don't sulk in failure. I'm actually quite lucky to say that, I've always believed in myself a lot. And if something failed, I'm just like, okay, move on to the next thing. I've had really big failures and I've just moved on to the next thing. I try everything. And if it doesn't stick, I move on.
There was a point I remember in my journey where a friend's like, it's inevitable. It's going to work. Like, you don't quit. And I didn't realize that I didn't quit. And then now I know with certainty, I will keep at something. Like my husband's like, you're relentless. I will keep at something until I figure it out. Right. Or breakthrough. It's interesting. I mean, trying to build a business is personal growth on steroids. You learn a lot about yourself as you're growing. What I loved about your app is those little tiny pep talks, because when you are like, and let's talk about that for a second, when you have this big belief of I don't have time, I can't meditate. And yet I have the desire to shift my brain. Like, what's the duality of that? Because I always talk about the messy middle of you have a dream and a desire for change, but you also really do live in this like Western culture. You're not going to sit there and meditate for hours.
Yeah, for me, the sitting there and meditating for hours thing was just so unrealistic. And I used to be, and I'm still a recovering perfectionist. Like I used to think that I should get everything done on my to-do list. I would always overdo that to-do list. And I had such high expectations of myself. And I've really realized over the years that you do not need to be perfect to succeed. I'm actually writing my first book right now, all about the bounce back rate, which is a term that I've coined. And it's all about how to reach success. It's not about perfection. It's about your bounce back rate, how quickly you can bounce back to being who you want to be. It's not about getting it perfectly right. It's just about realizing when you fall off track and just bouncing back when you remember that you've fallen off track. And I can confidently say that I've never had one perfect day in my entire life. And, I always used to chase that perfect day. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. in this perfect day. I'd have my green juice. I would go on my 10K walk. I would sit and do focus work for 2 hours without procrastinating once. I would, it was like I never have had one of those days. I've had little moments of that day, but I've never had a perfect day. So, the reality is you don't have to even try, and it's so unrealistic. It's not even worth it. And you can achieve success without being perfect. And I'm a perfect example of that. So to answer your question, that kind of messy middle is for me, there's a perfect balance between having goals and wanting to achieve that, but then also loving my life in the moment and living in the moment. I actually disagree with some of those, meditation teachers or gurus that are like, all you need to do is just live in the moment 100% of the time. I actually think that us human beings are goal-seeking creatures and we want to achieve, we want more out of life. We want to move forward. So I don't have a problem with that, with future thinking. I have this vision of my future self. I always think about her. I can be her in the moment. Future self doesn't mean not right now. It's this concept that I talk about, and I can be her in this moment right now. So I think, there's a sweet spot that you want to live in. I've definitely lived too much in either way. But I love feeling that excitement and aliveness about creating more in my life while also being satisfied with where I am right now.
Yeah, we've talked about that on your podcast because I was on your podcast, and the aliveness, like we're talking about feelings, and I see the duality of both people. Like I will kind of attract both people too. Like the woman who's like, I have a really solid to-do list and I have anxiety if it's not done, and I'm just a doer and I'm going to get it done. And then I have the beer, like she's all in the feeling, she's all in the meditation, she's doing whatever. And I'm like, you both need each other. You need to be a little more strategic and a little more get shit done. And you need to be a little more in your feelings and like, what does your soul crave? And you're going to want to go for, the fact that thinking about going for a walk or reading a book that's not personal development related or doing some art is going to really challenge the crap out of you. But if you both can do the opposite of what feels aligned for 5 minutes, you're literally rewiring your brain. Now, at the beginning, you talked about this pull for change. I'm obsessed with what makes, like, you can have two of the exact same people and one person is like, there was just this pull for change. And then I decided, there was one book and then there was 2 books and then there was a podcast. And the other person is just like, no. What do you think that is? Like, what was that pull for you? Do you ever wonder about this, or am I just the only one?
That's so funny that you bring this up because I actually think about this often. I believe that every single one of us on this planet is destined for something big. You know, we're all meant to live extraordinary lives. I actually use the word average now in a negative way. And sometimes I get hate for it. But today's average is unhappy, unhealthy, scrolling on your
100%.
phone 8 hours a day, negative victim mentality. Like, I don't want to be average. I would hate to be average. I don't want to be average because average today is a crappy life, living a life that you don't love. And yeah, you know, I had that pull. I had that gut feeling when I was in my late teens to kind of start changing my life because won't get into it too much, but I had, you know, pretty rough teenage years. Like my mental health wasn't great. I, you know, was partying and drinking a lot. I really was far away from who I was as a kid and who I was truly, you know, at the core. And yeah, you know, I had this gut feeling and I needed a moment of clarity to really listen to that feeling. So I decided at some point in that time to stop drinking for a few months. And I got this clarity from that. And I just decided to listen to that voice and think about the what if. For me, I'm really big on what ifs. Like, what if I could create this insane life for myself? What if I could become so financially successful that I could just do whatever I wanted for the rest of my life and help anyone that I wanted and give to whatever, you know, like person I want to, pay off my parents' mortgage? Like, what if I could create this epic business that everyone was so interested in, that everyone loved, that it affected their lives? What if I could have this beautiful relationship where he is my everything and I put so much of myself in it and it's so fulfilling? What if I could, you know, all of these things, like love myself so much and be so happy in my body and, you know, all of these things. And the truth is that anything's possible. Obviously, you know, we are all 100% responsible for our lives and we can create what we desire. And that was really my driving force when thinking that gut feeling inside, that little voice when I had nothing. What if? Like, that was my biggest thing. So to answer your question, I think it's innately in everyone. It's about how willing these people are to listen. I don't think we're more special. You know, I think everyone has the potential to get so clear on what they want and to become that ultimate potential version of themselves. So it's more so really about shedding out the layers of what you're not, shedding away the layers of caring what people think. That's a big one. If you care what people think about you, you're never going to be your ultimate potential self because, you know, you're going to be too scared and full of shame of starting something new without knowing if it's going to work out. So there are a lot of things, but to answer your question, I think everyone has it within them.
I always come back to this because I used to be a social worker and I worked front lines with people who, you know, culturally would have carry a lot of weight and have not good luck. And it was fascinating to watch. And I've told this story before. One day there was this teen mom and I said, "What's your dreams? Like, what do you want to do in the future?" And she's like, "I would love to go to school." And I remember I was a student at the time as well. I wasn't even an actual registered social worker at this time, but my project was I had to spend a lot of time with her. And so I was like, "Great, I'm going to spend a lot of time with you. Why don't we talk about the future? What you want to become? Let's create some goals." I got her to the point where she got accepted into university and we got her all these grants, all the things. And my heart was broken when my time was up with her and I knew I could no longer like mentor her. And my supervisor said to me, "Why would you put false hope in her? She's not capable of doing that." And at that time, so I lived in this like not fairy tale world, but I assumed everybody thought like me. I was like, I thought you went into a healthcare profession to make an impact. And I thought, I'm actually making an impact in this one person's life that is going to change the trajectory of our children's lives and futures to come. And all I had to do was instill belief in her. And I could not believe that I had somebody that I was supposed to look up to say, "How dare you put false hope into her?" And I knew that the second I left that she was going to collapse because of that. And I thought, interesting. Is this the industry that I'm getting into? Because my desires are not aligned with that. And so you talk about average, and what I love about it, your definition of like You don't actually have to do these transformational things. You just have to believe that you are allowed to feel better. You are allowed to respect yourself enough to say, you're not going to talk to me like that. You are allowed to say, hey, no, I'm not going to take on all this work, or I only have the capacity to do XYZ. And even with my children, I notice this all the time. But the power of belief is so, so important. And even if you don't have it with yourself, how somebody else can speak that into you. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Oh, absolutely. The beliefs create our lives.
Yes.
And it's scientifically proven. Like, we have systems in our brain, like we have the RAS, it's a filtration system, and your beliefs directly influence what you actually notice in your life. So if you believe, oh, I am a lucky person and I'm open to opportunities and I know I'm going to be successful one day, if that's a core belief of yours, your RAS is trained to see opportunities where you might not have seen them if your beliefs were different. So the reality is that I'm not in the business of victimizing people. People can think whatever they want. Of course, there are humans on this earth that come from backgrounds that are a lot less fortunate than others. And I completely sympathize and understand that fully. But at the end of the day, I will never tell someone that they can't have what they want because they are, victimized, and because it's not it's out of their control. It's always at some level in your control to live a life that you absolutely love. And you can become the kind of person that has what you want before actually achieving it. And the longer you do that, and the longer you're living in this future self energy of being that person that has everything you want, the sooner that you're actually going to see it happen in a material world. And it's funny because this is such a belief of mine that, like, good things happen to me. I am a successful person. I've changed so much about my life without even celebrating it or realizing it, because it's just so ingrained in me. My friends will tell you, you don't, Mimi, you don't celebrate at all, really, your victories. And I should more. And it's actually something I'm trying to work on, is to celebrate more. But because I'm just expecting these things to happen, it's just of course that happened. Of course, this person just reached out to me. Of course, my business just hit these numbers. I don't really celebrate things because it's just it feels so normal. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing.
I can totally resonate with that, because people tell me that all the time. They're like, it happens. And then you're like, next. And I'm like, I know, maybe that's because this is the game that I'm playing and I know I'm never done. But yes, sitting and being present with that, I think, is really important.
Absolutely. But yeah, my beliefs have created my life. My beliefs when I was in my late teens, when I was in a very bad place mentally, were I am a victim, because I didn't come from my immediate family, didn't have loads of money to give me. I was on my own from the age of 17, because I wasn't this perfectly fit, skinny girl and looking at magazine covers. I'm really short. I didn't look, I had all these excuses as to why I wasn't going to be able to have this life I wanted to, from the way I looked to the, economic situation my parents were in, to, all these different reasons. But the reality is, when I started to just listen to that what if voice in my head and I did this work, and I started reading these personal development books that were, really challenging my old victim beliefs. And, I was learning things like how I'm responsible for my life and how I can actually create the life of my dreams, and how if I believe that in itself, it will help me be empowered to create whatever life I want to, because I deeply believe I can do anything. And without that belief, I probably wouldn't have put the effort into everything I've done in my life, because if I didn't believe I was responsible for the outcome of my life, why would I put all that effort in? Why would I feel empowered to change? Right. So for me, this work has changed my life entirely. Belief changing has been everything from repeating affirmations in a journal to, subconsciously, reprogram my mind with listening to audios like Superhuman at night, or whenever I'm doing, these everyday activities, like getting ready in the morning, doing my hair, doing my makeup, going to the gym. If I'm just subconsciously listening to these audios, it's just, my beliefs are changing without me even noticing. It doesn't have to be hard. Here's another belief, Heather, that has changed my life. It doesn't have to be hard. It really doesn't. And it hasn't really been that hard for me. Of course, I've had sprints of intense work on my business and on myself, but it's never really felt like treacherous. And it's because I've reframed that in my mind. Like I can do quote hard things without it feeling hard. I love a long work day. I love putting my all into my business, but it's not this like heavy, hard feeling. And that belief has really transformed me too.
Well, I know on your podcast, I was talking about how I get triggered by, and everyone here would know that, like if they're listening, we can do hard things. And I love that when I heard you say that, it hasn't been hard. Yes, there are moments of sprints. Yes, there are moments, but it's emotionally uncomfortable. I realized lately it's the becoming of the identity. Am I the type of person who faces things that I have resistance around, or do I run away from them? And do I want to be the average person who runs away and says, we can't do that? And it's been interesting to watch and observe all humans do this. Even when it comes to like money, when I'm seeking out professionals to either investments, to accounting or whatever, I'm like, you need to have aligned beliefs because you could really mess up this path for me. I want to align myself with people who are practicing what they preach, thinking bigger than me, aligning themselves with next level energy. So I really appreciate this conversation, Mimi. Tell people where they can find more of you, the app, where they should start in the app, because these are women who want change and want to feel alive.
Absolutely. So you guys can try Superhuman completely for free for 2 whole weeks. We have a 14-day free trial. We have a money back guarantee if you forget to cancel. We have a risk-free promise because the content is so good. We back it so hard that honestly, we don't have a lot of people that take up the money back guarantee because of it. But we have that just for you to try it without feeling, any nerves. But yeah, all you got to do is go to www.superhuman.app. It's not .com, it's .app, app. And you can check out more about us there, more about the science behind what we do, more about what you can expect. And then you can sign up there or just go to the App Store and search Superhuman and you'll find us. And really, I would suggest just trying it for 10 minutes a day and listen to these audios while you're doing everyday activities. You don't need to change a behavior. Like you don't need to sit down for 20 minutes in the morning to meditate to feel the difference. All you need to do is press play on Superhuman in everyday moments. So that's while you're doing your hair in the morning, while you're cooking breakfast, while you're taking the dog on a walk for 10 minutes in the morning, just listen to it for 10 minutes a day. And I'm telling you, within that 14-day free trial, you will be absolutely transformed if you stay consistent with it. We have had the most insane testimonials from our users, and every single day we have people tagging us in posts. If you follow us on Instagram at Superhuman App, you'll see we have a huge community of people just transforming. So definitely go check it out. And where you can find me personally, I pretty much hang out on Instagram the most, just at Mimi Bouchard. And Superhuman is, again, www.superhuman.app. And I have a podcast, by the way, called Mimi, and Heather was a guest.
Love it. Thank you, Mimi.